Hey everybody, I am Heather with GetFitGoFigure.com, and tonight Jenny and I, JB, we're going to talk about flexible dieting. Basically, what is it, why you should do it, when you should do it, when you should not do it, and kind of the benefits or some things that make it challenging. So we're going to discuss that, but while she's getting on this phone call video live deal, I just wanted to plug one of my favorite sauces there ever was. It is the red-headed Chipotle chili sauce by Delish Nutrish. It's kind of hard to find online. I'll have to link it in the comments. But I swear to you, I met her at a physique summit like 4 years ago. She is a figure pro, and she created this because she wanted a sauce that wasn't full of carbohydrates, sugar, artificial sweeteners, and dyes, that tasted good. So she made her own sauce, and then she bottled it and sells it. And it is my favorite ever on the planet. I dip deli slices in this, like ham, Hormel natural deli slices in this for snacks, or when I need to get in more protein and I'm just craving like eating something when I'm sticking to macros. So you guys have got to try this out. It's super good. You've got to order online. And I will link that in the notes because sometimes the website's a little harder to find. All right, Jenny Baker is here. Let me add you, Jenny Baker. All right, Jenny, go ahead and request, please. So we have a lot of awesome events coming up with Get Fit Go Figure. You can go to the Facebook Get Fit Go Figure page and click on events, and you'll see all our Q&As that we're having that are coming up. And then also locally in the Twin Cities area and in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, there's some posing events coming up for all women's divisions for the bodybuilding shows that are coming up. The ones that are left, we have about 3 in our area that haven't been canceled. A little shady, but we're all doing our best. Ladies are sticking with it. Guys are fit for competing. So, hey girl.
Hi.
How's it going?
All right. How about for you?
Good.
Good.
All right, I'm going to try and adjust my lighting. It's a little bright there. Okay, cool. I was just telling everyone about this super awesome sauce. Have you ever had this, Jenny?
No, what is it called? It's kind of pixelated.
Yeah, so it's called red-headed Chipotle sauce. And it's like a sauce that's all natural, no artificial sweeteners and dyes, and it's super yummy. There's literally, the macros in it are amazing. I don't know if I'll be able to.
Yeah, I can't see them, but how many calories per tablespoon?
Okay, so 2 tablespoons are 20 calories, 0.5 fat, 3 carbs, and 1 protein.
That is good. Is it spicy?
I believe it works out to be, so I just had 6 bottles shipped, and it cost me $52. So it's not bad, but I love it. Good. It's like super worth it. So it gets me through, makes my protein taste really good, especially when you got to eat a whole lot. So, all right, let's get started. So we are going to talk about flexible dieting. What is flexible dieting? Jenny Baker, would you like to take that on?
Sure. Flexible dieting. Oh gosh, how do I explain that? So essentially it's when you're dieting, normally at the very basic bare bones of weight loss, it's calories in, calories out. Now obviously it's much more complicated than that, but ideally you want to eat as many calories or be in a deficit, fewer calories than what you need when you're trying to lose weight. Anyway, flexible dieting is when you're not following a prescribed eating plan in the sense of I'm only eating vegan, or I'm only eating gluten-free, or pescatarian, or whatever. Flexible dieting is when you can pretty much eat anything you want as long as it fits within that caloric goal you have, either to maintain your weight, gain weight, lose weight, whatever your goal is. But it's essentially kind of eating whatever you want. Obviously that's at the very basic. That doesn't cover the macros or the health related, but if you wanted to lose weight and do it all by eating cupcakes, flexible dieting would say, go right ahead, you can do it. So there are obviously other issues with that, but just saying, flexible
You would
dieting,
find
eat
out
whenever you
real
want.
quick. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so flexible dieting is basically sticking to a specific set of macros, right? Or calories, as Jenny was saying. And if the foods fit, you can eat them for essentially. But what people will find real fast is if you are set to a specific amount of macros, your proteins, your carbohydrates, and fats, you're going to find real quick that if you try to fit in a sleeve of Oreos, you're going to be out of fat real fast. So now what do? You've got to balance out with protein and carbohydrates, right? So it can take a little bit of getting used to for people, and a lot of people do struggle with that. And we'll talk about that as we go. So, why should someone want to flexible diet, right? And the name and reason being, it's in the name because it's flexible. Okay, so you can set in those parameters of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Or if you're going to stick with just calories, you can. I prefer the macro piece. I'm sure Jenny agrees with that. Um, but the other piece is a lot of coaches are not registered dietitians. And in many states, you cannot, as a coach that is not a registered dietitian, you cannot tell your client what they can eat. You can give them macros legally and call it a day. A lot of times I've had clients come to me and I'm like, all right, we're going to prep for a contest. We're going to lose weight. We're going to stick with macros. You can fit in foods that you like. It's flexible. But they have no idea because their coaches had given them a specific food plan. You're going to eat fish and asparagus and a cup of rice. Coaches cannot legally do that in most states unless they're a registered dietitian, and with good reason, right? So there's legal issues, and there's having the flexibility to fit foods in that you like, and then also not feeling so restricted on your diet, So Jenny, what do you think people think of when you say I'm going on a diet or I need, to lose weight or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, immediately what people come to mind is what they cannot eat anymore. Well, I'm going to have to eat all salads, or, I got to give up my cupcakes. That's the second time I brought up cupcakes,
You
so
have.
sorry about that. Anyway, but I think people focus so much on what they are not allowed to eat anymore. And the beauty of flexible dieting is that you can continue to eat some of those foods that you love, but like you said, it can be a little bit of like trying to figure out a puzzle of what you can fit into your macro limits, your protein, carbs, fat limitations for the day. So while that cupcake might sound good, like you said, that one might just completely obliterate all of your carbs for the day, and then what do? Then you can only eat meat and cheese or something. So anyway, I just feel like people associate dieting with restriction. And I think flexible dieting is freedom from that restriction for all, sakes and purposes. There's still restrictions, of course.
Yeah, of course. Totally agree. It's a really nice way for people to feel like when they go to their family barbecue, you still need to plan ahead, you still need to stick with things, but but you have the freedom to say, all right, well, I would really like to get in a serving of chips, or I'd really like to have some pasta salad, and you can fit those into your day. Maybe you're going to skip lunch and have more calories for that dinner. Great. You have the ability to do that. So, on other food plans that I'll work with lifestyle clients on is just starting with habits, because sometimes flexible dieting can feel overwhelming to people. So we'll say, all right, no refined sugar foods, or we're going to stay away from processed foods, or we're not going to eat after 8. And those are really great for long-term health solutions to help people clean up diets and understand and know what it feels like to eat healthy. But at the same time, it doesn't give them control, and I found that it does not give people the results that they want, especially in a decent time frame when they're sticking to macros and tracking their food. That is the number one way to help people understand how to meet their goal correctly while getting in enough protein, enough carbs, and enough fat for their workouts, for their lifestyle, those macronutrients can be different for everybody, but I find that it's just a really nice way to get people results while still having that flexibility. Because even portioning, like with your hand, like one palm size portion of chicken is a serving. Well, that can vary greatly, right? When you're eyeballing the thickness of the meat or how big your palm is or how hungry you are, your palm might be a whole lot bigger when you're hungry. So it is there, of course, you're restricted to sticking to those macros, but you do have a lot of nice flexibility there, and you can get results and find your balance between calories and activity by tracking that food. But it is challenging when you don't know how to do that. It can be very challenging to understand that. I was just on the phone yesterday with a client for an hour, and I had to bring up my Fitness Pal, flip my phone camera around, and walk her through all of the steps of how my Fitness Pal worked, just to get her comfortable, because it was very overwhelming for her to understand how to do that. Next question is, and we'll dive a little bit more into that too, but next question is, because you're on flexible dieting, does that mean you can eat whatever you want? Like, what does that mean? How do you work in your cupcake and still meet your macros? You want to answer that?
Well, in my opinion,
you can go first.
It ultimately depends on what your goal is. So it's possible to lose weight and not be healthy while you're doing it. So if your goal is exclusively to lose weight, then in theory, you can sort of eat whatever you want. Not how much you want, but whatever you want. Whereas if your goal is to lose weight and be healthy while you're doing it, then that's where some of the limitations come in, because now you're going to have to start categorizing the type of food you're eating. Like you said, you're going to have so much protein, you're going to have so much fat, and you're going to have so much carbs each day to maintain your health, because your body needs a certain amount of those things every day as you move forward. So if your goal, ultimately you have to decide what your goal is. Do you want to just be skinny but be unhealthy? That's fine. But obviously the way we would suggest is to go the more healthier route. We're not even talking micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals at this point, just those primary fat, protein, carbs goals. So no, you cannot eat just as much of everything that you want. You always boils down back to the calorie deficit. So, how much you eat is very important. Flexible dieting can help you be able to eat some of those foods you love, but keeping within the restraints that you're giving yourself.
Yeah, and another thing that I feel like it helps people do is understand the portion. So if they want to fit in a slice of pie or their favorite cupcake, you know that you could probably fit one in just fine. But if you're going to have all these other meals, your other 3 or 4 or 5 meals, however you break it down in a day, you're going to run out of fat real fast having had a cupcake if you're going to have 2. So you can have one, but then the rest of your meals, you need to be able to have enough fat grams per day, to fit in the rest of your food so that you can feel full and satiated. Because again, you can have 4 cupcakes and that might meet your fat and carb needs for the day. And then you'll have protein left over, but you're going to find you're going to be really hungry because you had a very low fiber, high refined sugar diet that day. You are going to starve, even though you ate those same amount of calories. Eating a sweet potato is going to be far more filling than it is to have a cupcake. A sweet potato with butter is going to be better than and keep you more satiated than a cupcake that you ate because it's processed much quicker. There's no fiber. So people find that balance real quick when they're sticking to macros. They know, they might go on a little bit of a couple days of like, oh, sweet, I can eat this and this and that, but they're going to find they're going to be really hungry, and they start fitting in foods with more bulk. Spaghetti squash, for example. You can eat a whole lot of spaghetti squash for the amount of carbs, or even popcorn, because you can snack on it. Like a serving of popcorn that gives you 30 grams of carbs gives you that nice kind of snacky feeling, like you can keep popping popcorn. So you find things that'll meet your carbohydrate needs that have a lot more bulk in them, so it's far more satisfying. Because otherwise, you're going to be hurting by the end of the day. You just are. It will happen, and it is no fun. So no, you can't eat everything and anything you want, because of course you'll still have those restrictions. If you're stuck to 150 grams a day, 200 carbs, and 70 fat, you've got to fit your foods into that. And again, if you eat 2 cupcakes or 3 cupcakes, you're going to fill up those macro needs real fast, and you're going to end up real hungry later. So that gets to be a challenge. So I really love flexible dieting when people learn how to count their macros, because it shows them how healthy foods can keep you feeling better during the day and long term. But it's nice.
And I want to say something about that, if you don't give me just another benefit, at least that I find for me, is it's an accountability system. So like you said, I mean, there are 2 things every day I eat. I have popcorn at lunch, a huge bowl of popcorn, and at night I have a snack that is like a protein pudding. And so I don't know how many times we might have gone out to dinner and I've contemplated dessert. I could probably fit that in, I think, but then I can't have my nighttime snack. And 9 times out of 10, it will stop me from eating that dessert. So in that way, it's actually kind of a nice accountability system with yourself to, you know, as you get used to it and do it, you're going to be like, oh, you know, I would really love to have that cookie, but if I do, that means I can't have, you know, whatever later on today. And it honestly can help you stop yourself or make you rethink what you're going to do. And I think that's an excellent accountability system. I wish more people would track macros, even just for a limited time, just because that gives you an idea of what serving sizes are, how much you can eat of certain things. And that's when you realize, oh my gosh, the sweet potato is so much better than these chips. You know, like for real, a 1 ounce of chips is typically 140 calories. I don't even know how many carbs, but the potato is much larger than that and so much more satisfying. So it's a kind of an interesting lesson when you go through counting macros.
Yeah, you make a great point there. I have had so many people, with especially my lifestyle clients, when they've been struggling forever to just lose weight and get results, when I have them start tracking their foods, every time, I swear to God, they're sending me a message like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how many calories was in this meal I ate at Noodles and Company, or how many macros, you know, for this set of, you know, bag of chips I was eating regularly or snacking on. So it is a great accountability tool. And then dieting and staying healthy long term, once you meet your goals, you've got to keep them. And so it always comes down to an if this or that. It's a trade-off, right? If I'm going to eat this cupcake today or now, then later I probably shouldn't eat my sweet potato or whatever. So it becomes a give or take. And you get to make those choices, and you become very mindful of those choices. And that's something you do your entire life. This isn't something you do just to diet down. Once you get there, you have to keep it. So you need to be able to keep those choices at hand and that mindfulness. It's always about being very mindful. And that's with anything in your life, being present with your family, being mindful of your stress levels and the energy you bring to the room, being mindful of your food choices and the way you're treating your body, being mindful about negative thoughts about yourself. I mean, people have negative thoughts about themselves all day long, especially females, constantly, thousands of thoughts. So it comes down to being very mindful, and tracking and sticking to macros helps people be very mindful of their food. And I find that to be, it really is the best way. I've seen the best results with clients dieting down because it makes them realize and forces them to realize all of those things that we just mentioned. Absolutely. Another question is there flexible dieting? Are there situations where it's not recommended? Do you feel there's any situation, Jenny, that you would not recommend sticking to macros or flexible dieting?
This one I mean, obviously people with dietary restrictions, you know, whether they have celiac disease or some other situation where, you know, they have a doctor prescribed diet and they shouldn't, a diabetic or whatever, you know, shouldn't have these foods over here. So in those cases, yes, part of me, I've never had this situation. So this is just a guess on my part, and you would have far more experience. But I would think someone who has a real, I hate to use the word addiction, but a real addiction to food and sweets may struggle if they still have access to those things. Sometimes you have to remove yourself from them either forever or at least for long enough that you can kind of break that dependence. So I kind of feel like in those situations, I wouldn't suggest flexible dieting because just a little taste could lead to too much, just an inability to stop.
Yep, absolutely. Michelle, we'll get to your question. Thank you for asking that about food apps. I have worked with people that have been in Overeaters Anonymous. So they, had these unhealthy relationships with food. They were in Overeaters Anonymous. They went to these regular groups, just like Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever. They were not allowed to set their own food macros, but they had to stick to something. And that was one rule for them was, it has to be whole foods. You have to stick with specific parameters, but you cannot set them yourself. You have to have a diet coach to set those. And that's where I came in. So that's one great example of where flexible dieting, exactly what you mentioned, is probably not the best idea for someone that has had issues or very unhealthy relationships with unhealthy foods in the past, where they really need to stick to certain parameters so that they can lead a healthier lifestyle, get their body fat down to where they're not having so many health issues as well, because being so overweight causes so many health issues. So yeah, that's a great point. There aren't a whole lot of situations where I wouldn't recommend it, other than people that, have that, if they eat a gateway food, that they're going to go down the rabbit hole. If they're going to start in on some chocolate that they really like, then where are they, left eating 4 chocolate bars all in one sitting because it's like oh, screw it, this is so good and I'm just hungry. So you can stick, of course, to flexible dieting with healthy foods, and that's where I'll work with those clients that are in Overeaters Anonymous, for example, or people that do have a really unhealthy relationship with food. It's just kind of separating emotions from those foods, which is a really hard thing to do because in our society, food is, in all cultures, food is something you share with family and friends, and it's how you celebrate things and what you look forward to doing with people, or even the act of making food with each other. It's a very important thing. So there's a lot of emotions tied to that, and that can be a very negative thing. So a lot of times I've also heard when people start sticking with macronutrients and they're, have these goals and they're working out, is they realize that food is fuel, and they separate that emotion out because now they're sticking to macros and they're like, okay, I just need to get this healthy food in to fit these macros. If I want to fit a treat in here and there, great. But it becomes a fuel source to meet your activity needs, and not so much oh, I feel really stressed right now, I'm going to snack on these chips, because I have no reference as to what I can be eating, or you have no control, right, over what you're eating because you're just mindlessly doing it. So yeah, so that was I totally agree with that on where it is not recommended as far as being really flexible about all the foods you can eat. Eating really clean can be really important for people that can't handle eating gateway foods for a while. You know what I mean? Okay, let's answer Michelle's question about food apps. Jenny, do you have a favorite food app that you like to track your macros with?
I do, although I think I'm the only person in the world that uses it, and it's called Spark People.
Yeah.
The reason I like Spark People is because it's user friendly on my desktop. I'm more of a desktop computer person, so I can't really say one way or the other how good it is for the phone. I did use it with my phone once, and it was fine, but I think most people use MyFitnessPal. So I'm not familiar with that one. I just know it's the most popular, and because of that, I would think that it's probably the most user-friendly mobile-wise. But if you're someone that likes, like me, old-fashioned, who likes the computer, Spark People, in my opinion, is the way to go.
So Adam, my partner, uses Spark People and he likes it. And I think the interface on the phone is better. So let me talk about that. So I've used my Fitness Pal for years and all my stuff is set up in it. My meals saved. I have, my recent searches come up. So I'm set up there and I tried switching to try out some other apps and I was like, oh my God, I'm starting over. So no. There's other apps called Lose It, Spark People, like you mentioned, and My Macros that are really popular. Now, I do like the interface on the phone for Lose It, My Macros, and Spark People better. And I think Spark People does this because on your food diary on your phone, you can see not only the foods you put in with the macros, but the totals are on the bottom, correct?
Mm-hmm.
On my Fitness Pal, it's the only one that doesn't do it. You see your food diary on your phone, but you have to go to nutrition to go to a different window to look up your totals. And it makes me insane when you're planning the day because I always put my food in the night before. Otherwise, like the day can go to heck. And I super recommend that. So put your food in the night before or the morning of so you have it all planned out. You know what you're going to do. That's what I do. That's what my clients do. It helps a lot. But on Lose It, My Macros, and Spark People, it's all totaled conveniently on the bottom of your phone, right where all the foods are, so you can make adjustments to the servings. It's so much better. So
Mm-hmm.
I will a lot of times also use the desktop. It's a really nice view. I have a big screen. I can see the whole day. I'll make kind of a food list of what I have in my refrigerator, and then I'll go through and enter those foods of what I'm going to have the next day. And that makes it real simple to do it on the computer. Your phones, when you're using these apps, have scanners. So when you go to enter the food, you can scan the barcode on the label, which is so convenient. And you don't have to search for things. I have found though, because Adam uses my Spark People, is he scanned rice-a-roni the other day and all the macros were wrong. And I scanned my Fitness Pal and they are more often correct. So I have found that my Fitness Pal has a better food database, I feel like, compared to some other ones, but the interfaces are nicer on the phone. That's my experience. So my Fitness Pal, Lose It, My Macros, and Spark People are all very popular ones that friends and clients have all used, and they've all done the trick. You just got to get used to it. And I feel it
Mm-hmm.
takes about 2 to 3 weeks if you're just starting to count macros and track your food. It takes a good 2 to 3 weeks to get comfortable. Jenny, when you first started counting macros, how did that go for you? Like, how did you feel? Did you find it challenging? Did you catch on right away?
I've been doing it for so long now. It's hard for me to remember
Yeah,
not doing it.
yeah.
So, I'm gonna I'm gonna go. Okay, so my training partner Johanna was prepping for contests, so I had her using Spark People to track her macros, helping her with that. And so through her eyes, I was able to kind of revisit what that's like, those struggles. And so it was just, I guess, just how much is a portion? Like what are grams? Like how many grams are you supposed to have? And how do you know if you're trying to shoot for 30 grams of protein for breakfast? How do you know you can do it? Like the best way in the beginning is to plan it out ahead of time. So that way, sometimes you have to do a little adjusting. Well, let's see, how much does 28 grams of this chicken, how much protein does that have? And adjust it. Oh, I can't eat 28 grams, but I can eat 15 grams, and then it'll give me 2 grams of protein left. What can I eat with 2 grams of protein? It's those little
It is.
mathematical things that I think are the trickiest for people to figure out. Like, how much can I eat to equal this goal you've given me? And, my best advice is what you already said, and that is to put your meals in ahead of time. And I don't do that now. Now I'm really well versed in everything I eat. So I could almost always know what I'm going to eat and put it in later. But in the beginning, I think you really need to kind of plan things out just to give you a feel for how it works, how to figure out how big of a portion you can have, that kind of thing. Instead of eating it and then putting it in and going, oh crap, I ate way too much.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I first got into bodybuilding and I'd never tracked macros before. I had tracked calories, but I never had really stuck to specific macros. And before that, years and years and years before that, I've always eaten really healthy whole foods. You know, I did restrict from eating a lot of junk. Or after I had my kids, I was like keeping out all carbs possible and eating only nuts and protein and whatever, kind of just sticking to different food lists, or always paleo or nourishing traditions or whatever. So when I started bodybuilding and my coach had me stick to macros and I could fit whatever foods I wanted in there, it was so freeing to be like, oh my God, I could fit this in and not feel guilty about it. It was wonderful. But it took a little getting used to. It took me a good week to really start feeling comfortable, because at the beginning I was really frustrated. I was like, oh my God, I have to adjust the servings and enter all these foods. But once you get the hang of it, it really is, like you said, like right now, you don't need to put it in the night before, because you know exactly what you usually eat and how much that is. And you could probably look at something and say exactly how much it actually weighs and how much protein or carbs in there. You get to that point where you're like, yeah, my when I was with my ex-husband during my second prep, he would hold up foods like a bunch of cauliflower or broccoli, and I would tell him literally nearly like plus or minus 2 grams how much it weighed, because you just get so good at it. And that's also another benefit is, you know, you might get to your goal and maintain, and then you're sick of counting macros, so take a break. Great. Well, now you know exactly what portions you're probably going to need that day, and you'll have that give or take mentality like, no, you know what? I already had this treat this afternoon because it was my nephew's birthday. So tonight I'm going to just stick with whole foods in this portion of carbs. So there's a lot of nice benefits that kind of force you into these healthier habits, which is really good. Let's see. Is it possible to eat a flexible dieting type lifestyle without counting calories or macros? And I think we sort of answered that with the,
yeah.
You can.
Not at first.
Yeah, not at first, for sure. Like, it's a give and take, right? It's if you, for some clients, I'll give them portions. We will start with the hand portions or measuring cups kind of a deal. Like, I want you to eat 4 portions of protein a day, 4 portions of carbs, and 5 portions of fat. And I'll give them what those portions are. And they can do that. And it just makes it harder, because when you are switching out different meats, some meats have way more fat, like salmon versus chicken. A lot of carbohydrates are all over the board. If you're going to have a cup of banana versus a cup of raspberries or sweet potatoes, the carbohydrate content is so different, because bananas are very sugar dense. So I can't just say, yeah, have a fist serving size of carbohydrates. Well, that could be the difference between 200 and 500 calories based on the food. So it gets a little bit trickier, but I would highly suggest, if you want a flexible diet, get an app, download it, get familiar with it. Maybe just track your food first for a week. Don't even worry about the macros. Just track your food, get used to entering things, get used to measuring things. Weighing your food is the most accurate. You can use measuring cups. It's not as accurate, but if you're consistent, that's fine. But just get used to it. That's what I usually tell my clients when we're just starting, is just, you know, let's take a week and I just want you to track all your food. Questions will come up. We'll take a phone call. We'll show you how to do it. But then we're going to start sticking with it. And again, it takes a couple weeks, but once you're used to it, it's like you become an old pro and it's no big deal. When you're cooking with kids and trying to get things to work out, what I usually do is half the dinner, my kids and I have the same thing. Like, I'm making grilled chicken or grilled steak or whatever. I'll make a vegetable, so we're all having green beans, and then they don't like sweet potatoes, so I'll grill a sweet potato in tin foil with butter. It's so good. And they might have, you know, I might cut up some fruit or rice, or they love these gluten-free baguettes I buy. So I'll make 1 or 2 things just a little different for them. But you have to make it manageable with your family too. So that's also, you know, take some planning ahead, because not everyone's going to want to eat your fish and asparagus and, you know, your white rice that you plan for yourself. Keeping it simple is really important as well. Well, that's another point. keeping it simple. When people
Mm.
start tracking macros, you are not making casseroles and, you know, egg bakes and banana muffin things, because you have to figure out the macros in all of those recipes. So keep it simple to start. Breakfast, you're going to have 2 eggs and an apple. And lunch, you're going to have chicken on lettuce with olive oil and vinegar. And dinner is going to be a, you know, steak and a cup of rice and green beans or whatever. So you got to keep it simple. Do you agree, Jenny, or disagree with
You
any of
do
that?
in the beginning, but I want to make it clear to everyone out there that that doesn't mean that you have to give up your casseroles or any kind of mixed,
Totally.
complicated meals forever, because once you get used to it, then you do start to learn how to calculate the macros of an entire recipe. And then you can break that down. It's actually quite easy. And on Get Fit, Go Figure, the blog does have it's called something about how to track home cooked meals, macros for home cooked meals or something. But
Yeah,
anyway, and that goes through how
I'll
you
link
can
that
do that.
one.
So anyway, don't worry. We're not saying you can never have those complicated recipes again. You just can't in the beginning.
Yeah, great point. And literally half my cookbooks at this point have all the macro breakdowns and servings written in them, and they're saved in my Fitness Pal under, you know, Heather's gluten-free casserole or whatever, or the cookbook name with the recipe. So you do get used to it and it becomes easy, and pretty much over time you always have some go-to recipes. Um, and you can, you know, calculate those macros in my Fitness Pal and call it a day. So great point. Start simple for sure, but once you get used to it, absolutely. That does not mean you have to give up your treasured family recipes and soups or whatever. You just have to put up the work up front so that later it's easy and it's already in there. So you can just find the meal in your tracking app and add it, you know, how many servings that you had. So really great point. But I will link in the notes, in the comments below, I'm going to link a couple different things. I'm going to link that article that Jenny just mentioned regarding how to home cook meals. Jenny wrote that one. There's another one called How to Track Macros, Everything You Need to Know. Jenny wrote that one last June as well. And then there's one I wrote 5 years ago already. It's called like How Much to Lose and How to Cut Macros. And it's basically how to set up your macros for you, because I don't go based on percentages like a lot of apps do, or if it fits your macros.com, you can go and it'll calculate it for you. That's great. You can do that. I don't go off of that. I like to go off of body weight and make those calculations. And then the article also tells you how to cut calories down as you go, because you want to diet slowly over time. You don't want to drop your calories from 2,500 to 1,500. You will starve and set yourself up for like a big fat mess. So to get started, you're going to download an app. Just track your food for a week and get used to it. Get used to it. Get a food scale. They make things much easier and more accurate. You'll get used to that. And then after that, calculate your macros and then figure out what your goals are. And if you need help, Jenny or I are here to help you, or to coach you through it, or to help you cut those calories and get to your goals. Or maybe it's not cutting calories you need, it's actually increasing calories, or reverse dieting, which a lot of people actually need more than they realize. So do you have any final words there, Jenny, before we sign off?
No, you mentioned if it fits your macro, so I just really quick, if anyone out there is just learning about this, there is an acronym called iifym. So if you ever see that, it's if it fits your macros. So now you're in the know, and you can totally share that information at your next dinner party and wow your friends.
Great point. Yeah, if it fits your macros, the iifym.com is a very popular site to go for resources, and it'll calculate your macros. There's a ton of macro calculators. Your app that you download will do it too, but they do work off of percentages, and that's totally fine. Again, me as a coach, I don't work off of percentages, because as I cut people down, the percentages would get super wonky and would make no sense. And
The macro ratios will differ based on the goal. So sometimes people are on a higher fat diet, some are on a lower fat diet with higher carbs. So it'll vary greatly. So I just start with body weight and my experience, and we go from there. But I will link a couple articles in the comment section so you can check those out. You guys can find it out more in depth on how to do what we have just been talking about.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. You rock.
Yeah, you bet. Nice talking to you guys. See you later.
Thanks for joining us. Have a good night. Bye, guys.
You too.